Hey, hey, freedom fighters. It's Freedom Friday, and I'm your coach, Helen Bennett, here to chat about the specifics of the challenges of eating disorders, most specifically bulimia, but this will also apply for people who are struggling with compulsive overeating, emotional eating, and binge eating disorder. The topic today is a pretty heavy one, but you know what? Let's face it. Let's just face it head on and dive in. And that is, what is the impact that your relationship with food and maybe your relationship with your body having on your loved ones, most specifically your children, as you even as you're trying to do the recovery journey. So I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm just going to be real. And you can hear I'm struggling a bit with this one because it's going to be a tricky one. And I'm going to say things that might be challenging to hear or will make you feel really sad. And that's okay, because know that your sadness or your regret could be coming, well, not could, is coming from a place of deep love. So I really want to begin with that is, if something I say today makes you feel sad or sadness or regret, those are completely normal emotions. It would be weird if you didn't feel them. And that's so beautiful because it just shows how much you care about the impact you have on your loved ones. And it shows how much you want your impact to be positive and not negative. So remember that emotion is there and it's going to want to be felt, and let it through. And just remind yourself, this is a good sign, because if you didn't care about them, you would feel nothing at the impact that your disorder or your disordered eating, disordered thinking has been having on your loved ones, most specifically your kids. Okay, let's dive in. Before we do, if you get value from this video, please like the show. Just press that like button for me. Smash it right now. Because that will help this content get out to people who need to hear it. And we all know, as somebody who's struggled with bulimia for 20 years, that bulimia is a really difficult thing to speak about in public, and it's difficult to find people speaking about in public. And I know how alone I felt with the disorder, and I'm quite sure that if I'd managed to stumble across content like this when I was at my worst, it would have been so powerful at helping me not only start to understand how to break free, but also to really feel like I wasn't alone. There's not a single person I've jumped on a call with who hasn't shared a bit of their journey with me and felt such relief as I share that I really get it and I really understand the level of compulsion, the challenges, the shame, the daily battle, the nightmare that bulimia specifically, but disordered eating can be. And so the more we can get this content out to people, and if you're feeling really brave and bold, please comment. Let me know where you're from. Tell me your struggles. Let me serve you in the best way I can. Let me just make sure I turn my comments on so I can see if anybody jumps in. I'd love this to become not just me chatting to a screen for half an hour, but a place where we can all connect on a Friday and sort of share support for each other, because just recovering from a really tricky eating disorder is really hard. And the more we feel not alone, and the more we feel like we can share our journey with other people, and that we feel people get and understand us, the more powerful the journey becomes, the faster we'll make progress. That's just guaranteed. So I really want to encourage you, if you're watching this, to make a point of putting it in your diary that at 1:30 p.m. Central European time, at this time of day, wherever you are in the world, you're going to jump on board with me and join in the live and join in the chat so we can start supporting each other and show some freedom fighter love, because we all know how challenging the weekends can be. And this is designed to be on a Friday to give you something to motivate you into the weekend ahead, and also something to watch if you're struggling on the weekend. So if you feel an urge coming up, I tell you what, 15 minutes to 30 minutes can be enough to break that energy of the urge. So play a Freedom Friday video, play one of these lives, so that you can not only be learning and motivated, but also so that you can just be distracted enough and shift your focus somewhere else for long enough to get through one of those compulsive urges. Okay, let's get back to the topic. So the reason that I actually am chatting about this today is because somebody that I've met once and sort of worked with, but through my course, reached out to me today to say she was so worried because one of her kids is clearly showing evidence that he's aware of her purging. She's doing way better, by the way, but of course now she's feeling so much regret. I don't want to go into the story because I don't want to reveal names, etc., but we've all had some version of this, where there's this horrible moment of sinking heart when you realize that something you've been doing is negatively impacting a loved one, and particularly children. And the reason we're focusing on children today, because remember, I don't have kids. If you're new here, you didn't know that, I don't have children. But of course, I was a child of a couple of parents. But most specifically, I know that not only was I impacted by my mum's relationship with her body, and that had an impact, it wasn't the cause, but it had an impact on my relationship with my body, and then also what then subsequently became my reaching for anything to help me stay thin, because I thought that's what I needed to be loved. Her relationship with her body absolutely impacted mine. And I have to be honest, God forbid my mum watches this, is sometimes when she talks about her body negatively, I feel that sort of wave of anger as I'm reminded how it was that talk that created a narrative in my mind that led me to think that my body wasn't enough, just as it was. Speaking of that, before we go a little bit further, I want to share with you something. So on my other channel today, I did a video about how to begin to speak positively about your body if you've spent decades hating it, right? And it's so important that we do. And I go deep into the value in the video. So I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see. I'm getting used to this, so you guys can see my other channel. Aha, there it is. So let's share there. So this is my other channel, Helen Bennett. You see live at lunch. So you just youtube.com / Coach Helen Bennett, and you'll see today I did a show. Here it is. There it is. Let's just turn the volume down. And this one is all about how to speak really positive, how to have a positive boss talk with yourself. And that's going to be so important for the stuff that we're talking about today. But what I also want to show you is in this video that we're doing right now, and in all of my videos, you'll see in the description are all the links you could possibly need. So if I mention a course, or I mention a call, or I mention something that I'm doing, you'll see all the links are there. And you can find me on Instagram, and you can join me wherever you like your social media. So use all those links so you can get all the resources you need to help you. And most specifically, if you're struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder, as in our case, bulimia, one of the things I can recommend for you guys is a 12-week course that's in the link below. It's called the Bulimia Freedom Bootcamp. It is fantastic. Okay, floating my own boat, but it is. I put a lot of work into it. And if you use the code BFF, that stands for Bulimia Freedom Fighter, you're going to get a massive discount. Okay, so if you're not sure what to do with all this information, you want to put it into action, go there and get started. You're going to love it. So let's continue. The impact that we have on our kids. My mum did not have bulimia, but she did have a very negative body image, and that rubbed off on me. Now, I want to be clear. My mum never said to me, Helen, you're fat. My little brain interpreted my mum's relationship with her body as meaning that I was clearly not good enough in mine, partly because I'm half of her genetics, right? And partly because objectively, and I really started to feel this as I got into my teens, I was objectively shorter and objectively broader than her. I was also much more sporty and all those things, but that wasn't something that was necessarily valued by my mum. And this is not a dig at my mum. This is just pure fact. My mum used to walk in. She was the age of Jane Fonda and the leg warmers and all of that. And she used to walk in to my bedroom and grab her non-existent muffin top and squeeze it and go, oh my goodness, I'm so fat. And when I saw that, I sort of learned two things. I learned fat was not a good thing. It was something to be ashamed of and got rid of. And I also learned, well, I interpreted, if my mum thinks she's fat, and she to me was just the most beautiful, is still the most beautiful woman. And her body when she was younger was actually the kind of body that, I would have loved to have. But I didn't have her genes exactly. I had a bit of my dad in me, and that made me sporty and fit. It makes me a bit of a biker mouse. I love it, right? Now. But at the time, I saw this woman I revered grab her fat rolls and shame them. Even though she never shamed me, and even though I'm sure she would have said a number of wonderful things. She always told me I was beautiful, all of those things. I didn't hear it because all I could see was what she was showing me, which was fat is not acceptable. And she wasn't overly obsessed with her food, but she would make comments like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. And I shouldn't, as most women do these days. And that had a huge impact on me. Now, it wasn't reason I started throwing out my food. But of course, it would have been a part of it because we're picking up all this information from society, media, movies, and now, God forbid, social media, plus all our peer group. So, but my mum played a pivotal role in that. And we've got to lay blame where blame is due. Now, an element of what I believed about myself was because I was a child, and children absorb information and they create narratives and beliefs, oftentimes passed down from the very ones that their parents hold. And of course, their peer group has a huge role. And of course, the media has a huge role, of course. And they all can be, we can put the blame at the foot of all of them for the mindset that we then adopted and developed as kids, right? But then as adults, we have this unbelievable responsibility. I call it radical responsibility to take complete, not control, but ownership of what we begin to think and believe. Now, we couldn't do it then because nobody taught us and we didn't even know we were creating beliefs. We thought our thoughts were all real and they were all true. And now we know that a bunch of things that we thought were true was simply complete bollocks. So now we as adults have to do the work of turning this stuff around. And that video that I spoke about earlier really goes into that when it comes to body image. But here's the other thing where parents have a big impact. It's their relationship with food. And I don't know if you've ever been at a table with somebody who is saying all the right things about food, but you can feel the energy of tension around them. You can feel the fear or the restriction, or you can feel them watching your plate. I know that I was that person. And not only that, I was also highly restrictive. I was constantly talking about what food I should and shouldn't eat. I was being a bit of food police on everybody else too. And there's no doubt in my mind that even if I had been saying all the right things, the energy of fear and restriction that I had within me would have communicated itself no matter what I was saying. So the bad news is that even if you're trying to be the best possible parent you can be, but you're struggling with an eating disorder, you're struggling with negative body image, you're struggling with your relationship with food and restrictive relationship with food, you're struggling with what it means to be fat, you're struggling with shame, all of those things. Even if you're saying all the right things to your kid, but you're treating yourself differently, they will feel it. And there's a good chance it'll impact them. And I know this because sadly, just about everybody who jumps in a call with me who's struggled with compulsive eating of any nature, but definitely bulimia, we can root it back, the big origins of the kind of narratives, to things that mum and dad said around body and food. And in some case, it was blatant, where parents were bullying and cruel about body image and were highly restrictive. I've had clients who from the day they were born were put on diets by their mothers, who were so culturally conditioned to think that fat was the absolute worst thing that a little girl could be. So I want to give your parents a huge amount of forgiveness, just as I absolutely would forgive my mum, because she was a product of her environment, and the so on and so forth, and so it goes back. And my dad has a role to play. Don't you worry, but that was different, right? And I have so much compassion for me now, because I get that I didn't get to choose those narratives. I didn't get to choose the culture I was born into. You know, I was just responding and doing the best that I could. And I know that now, and it's taken a long time to get there. But if you're feeling sadness and regret about how you've behaved around food and your body up until now in front of your kids, despite all the best intentions of helping them be intuitive eaters and have them build a good relationship with their body, if you are shaming yourself or even bringing the energy of it to the room, they will probably be feeling it. But here's the good news. You can change. And kids are unbelievably responsive. Even adult kids are unbelievably responsive to when parents start to treat themselves better, to starting to believe that they can treat them. So if my parents start to treat themselves better, I will begin to believe that I'm allowed to treat myself better too, because they are my greatest role models, right? And so your job, once you've felt the pain and the regret and the sadness of all the things that you've done and all the impacts you've had on your loved ones, and we haven't even spoken about financial and mood and oh my God, there's so much, right? There's so much impact. We've just spoken about body image and our relationship with food, but I know I was stealing food, I was hiding food, I was lying to my loved ones. I was staying at home when I've missed parties and funerals and weddings because of my shame and my self-loathing. And I'm so regretful of all of that. And I couldn't have done it differently, because if I could have, I would have. And that's how I know. It's taken me a long time to really feel that that's true. But once I knew I had something that I could work with and things that were actually changing and helping me break free of the compulsions, and they're 3: restriction, binging, and purging. It's not just one. You've got to break all 3. It's a big, big, big journey. It's a mountain to climb if you're at the bottom, but it's doable. And every day, when you've got something that works and you've got a strategy that's moving you in the right direction, you've got to commit to it. And if you're feeling pain, sadness, regret around the impact you've had on particularly your kids, now is the time to double down on your commitment to change. And I'm just going to get really hard here with you now. That does not look like I'm just going to try again tomorrow. That looks like getting clear on what you're doing, carving out time to do it, getting some goddamn help. I don't know who, let it be me, that'd be great, but go and get it. Because the faster you can make the changes, the better. And I promise you, the impact they will have on your kids will be next level. Because as you start to feel good in your body authentically, and as you start to build a free, relaxed, intuitive relationship with food, and as you start to allow yourself an indulgence and savor it, and as you start to drop all that negative energy you've had around your body and your weight and the food and all of that stuff, and as you slowly repair all of that stuff that's happened in the past for yourself, it will ricochet down the line. It is top down. So we cannot undo what you've done up until today. But by God, you can start working from here on out. And that if that has made you want to commit hard to make the change, you have to prioritize it. And you have to put time into it. I'd be putting in, if you really want to make momentum, really massive momentum, I'd be going for a good 2 hours a day of commitment. What does that look like? Say, for example, getting involved in the course, watching the videos, doing the worksheets, doing your tummy check-ins, doing headwind busting at the end of the night, watching for an emotional check-in, reaching out to the group, jump into the BFFs, be accountable, find a buddy, find a therapist, find a coach. Begin getting as serious about this as if you were building a career, or as if you were learning a language that you had to speak fluently in a year. And I promise you it will pay dividends, provided you're doing something that actually works. And here's the spoiler alert, and I said this in my last video. Going on another diet, trying to control yourself harder, is not the thing that works. That actually makes things worse. Being cruel with yourself never works. If you come away from this video and you go into a self-flagellatory, death spiral, the probably likely outcome of that will be that you'll want to go and use the very behaviors that make you feel better to get out of it. So the best thing you can do is give yourself compassion and grace. And just keep remembering, your coach has said to you that it is okay, that you have made mistakes. We have all done it. And it may not be a quick ride out of here, but you're going to make it. And all you need to do is get committed and put in the work. And just keep showing up, no matter how many times you feel like you're getting nowhere, or you feel like there's a long way still to go. As long as you're making small incremental progress, that's all you need. And you will get out of there and you will change. And people will start coming up to you in a year's time and say to you, oh my God, you're so much less stressed. You're just so relaxed around food. It's such a delight to see. And one day, maybe your kids will even say, Mom, I remember, or Dad, I remember there was a time when you were really stressed about food, and that used to make me so stressed about food. And then you shifted, and I'm so grateful for that. It's possible. It starts with you. It really, really does. So the more you can change and the faster you can change your relationship and break your compulsions, and the more serious you get about it. The one thing I always sort of envied about people who had kids is I can see how determined and driven it makes them to do the work, to show up, to put in the effort, to do the worksheets, to do the hard yards. It's a powerful motivator. It's not going to be the thing that will stop you for good from today onwards. This is a very challenging disorder, and there's a good chance you're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. You just have to make the commitment. You'll learn from them. That's it. And you'll keep going, and you won't give up. And I promise in a year's time, you're not even going to recognize. You're not going to recognize yourself You're not going to recognize how you feel about yourself and how free you feel around food. And there will still be work to be done. And that's okay. But you'll be a long way from where you were today. So make that commitment. I've got huge regrets about the impact I've had on my husband, my sister. That was stuff I didn't really even know about until last year. My mum. And my dad wasn't really in my life when my bulimia started. I think I'll carry those regrets for the rest of my life, to be honest. I think I'm going to always wish that I hadn't ever gone down that path the first time. I cannot change it, but I can learn to be at peace with that and just let the regret. It's like grief, right? You just got to let it be. It might be there forever. That's okay. But regret is not the same as self-flagellation, self-criticism, and shame. That I've let go of. Because as I said, if I was supposed to do better, I would have done. And I know I wasn't supposed to because I didn't. And when I could do better, I did. And it wasn't fast, but it was slow and committed, and it worked. And I want that for you too. Have a lovely Freedom Friday. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Don't be shy to reach out for help if you need it. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Same time, same place.